All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what is episode 3. I'm already losing track here of the Collegiate Esports Experience. I'm here with Tanner. Actually, Coach Tanner had a couple of big dubs last night.
Last night, two big dubs, Kansas State, Illinois State.
Love that. I love
Regions
that.
reign, so.
You text me like, "Are you proud?" I was like, "I'm so proud of you." But more important than us, we are joined by Gabriel. Invert, Zoltan-Johan. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, man.
Yeah.
I barely can pronounce my own, right?
It's okay. It's helpful that it rhymes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And we're very fortunate and thankful to have you jumping on. I know we briefly just met this summer.
Yes,
through the NACE convention, all that stuff. But when we were planning this podcast and kind of going through it, you were certainly one of the first people where we were like, we got to have him on, right?
I appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. Rather than us kind of rambling on and trying to summarize all the great work you've done, give us a brief intro to yourself and kind of how you got into the scene and the things that you've done.
Sure. I'll first off say Canadian born and raised. So, north of the border there. A lot of great esports talent coming out of there on the player and staff side. I guess I can include myself in that. But actually, I guess my foray into esports started when I was in high school working with the local grassroots fighting game scene. Actually, even before that, honestly, now that it pops into my head, I think MLG had a stop in Toronto, very, very long ago. Like maybe some of your viewers might not have been born when it happened, but yeah, that kind of I'm a very competitive person at heart, and that was my foray into competitive gaming to start. And then when I started attending the University of Toronto, I eventually became the head coach of the League of Legends team there. It is a club there. It's not like a funded varsity program. But even despite that, we had very good results. So while I was head coach there in the second year, we actually went to the North American CLOL finals. We went to the World Finals in Wuhan, China, and we won the Taipei Universiade League of Legends event. So we qualified for the University Olympics through the event in Wuhan, China in 2017, and then we actually won that event. So I get to joke about being a gold medalist in
it's
that
a little bit of bragging, right?
Yeah,
rightfully so.
Tiny bit. Also,
absolutely.
also want to get the bragging rights of being a North American coach that's actually won something internationally for this region.
Yeah. Few and far between.
Exactly, especially in League of Legends.
Yeah.
So, all of that to say is, it really lined up well, that moment in my life with the moment in League of Legends esports. I had just graduated. I've completed my undergrad, and in 2018, franchising was coming about, and so teams were searching for newer talent to populate their academy spots, etc. And myself and some of my players were very natural fits due to our accomplishments in collegiate. And so LCS teams, took a look at us, offered us. We eventually joined FlyQuest. I was there for 2 years, won the inaugural first ever academy split, which is another fun thing to brag about, I suppose, and then became the LCS head coach in 2019, and then had LCS stints at Dignitas and Immortals as well.
Oh, yeah.
So
an extensive resume.
yeah,
Very impressive.
It's only been 2 years. It was 2 years in collegiate for me, and then 5 years now in the pro scene, so to say. But have left that behind for now to start the Esports Coaches Guild, which I'm very excited about, especially the ways in which it can impact programs like yours and collegiate overall.
So why don't you go a little bit? I know you gave a long spiel there about your resume, which is very impressive, but go a little bit more detail about the Coaches Guild there.
Yeah, so I had left Los Angeles because I was living there for in order to compete in the LCS. Came back to Canada and decided to start this company called the Esports Coaches Guild. It's actually a non-profit trade association, so it's organized to, I guess, be not as as least exploitative as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And we do a few things. The main things that we do are advocacy work for coaches. So we help coaches and competitive staff at all levels understand their rights, protections, etc. Doing legal workshops, going over people's contracts when they're offered a contract from a professional team. Anecdotally, I've seen situations where contracts were offered or accepted that were, um, you know, uh, challenging or violating labor laws of the state, or
Yeah.
they simply like couldn't be considered legally binding contracts due to the language and nature of the contract. Um, and so because of my extensive experience, I wanted to create something that could protect people against that, because oftentimes, and I'm sure you guys understand this as well, programs or people who are very young kids who are college age, they often don't have access to that kind of information or legal resources or agents and the like. And that's doubly true for people who are coaches or competitive staff. Uh, often they have less resources. They're accepting lower contracts. Agents often don't represent those people for one reason or another, and so that was a huge portion of what we do, and the advocacy work there to continue to find new ways to improve the life of coaching, because it's very difficult. But the other thing we do that I really like, and I think is really impactful for the region and the collegiate scene in particular, is we do coaching education.
Mm.
So I take the, I guess, expertise, experience of myself and fellow colleagues of mine who have been in the LCS, both as players and staff. They've won the LCS, they've gone to Worlds, pretty extensive resumes, sometimes even more than myself, and we've like crafted and curated, a set of courses that coaches can have access to learn things about not just in-game strategy of games like League of Legends, but also out of game coaching concepts, so that you can actually grow into your role as a coach, regardless of the game
Mhm.
that you're playing, or that you're coaching, rather.
Yeah.
Sometimes both, depending on the program.
Yeah, sure. I I know myself personally when we met you at the NACE convention and things like that, I truly thought that this was such an interesting concept, and we talked before the podcast started about finding your niche and things like that, and
For sure.
this is a great example of that, because I think with how new the esports world is in general, but especially in collegiate, right? We haven't had the time to, we're getting pipelines now, and we're having people be able to be developed to be either the coach and player they need to be or whatever, right? But for the last couple of years, a lot of people have been, a staff or faculty member who is passionate about collegiate esports or just esports in general, who's assuming the role to be the best that they can, but they might not have the tools necessary. And it's not a no, it's not a, for those of you who can't see, Tanner's pointing at himself, and I think he's incorrect, but he you can be, it's not at the fault of the people that are stepping in, right? They just haven't had the we're not where we're at in esports, where we are with things like football, soccer. Those have been around in terms of professional orgs and collegiate play for a long time, and so I think this is
100%.
a really big step towards allowing coaches the resources to best serve their students, right?
Yeah. Two. Oh, sorry. I was just
Nope,
gonna say
go ahead.
two things that really opened my eyes in my research. I was in collegiate, but many years have passed since then. I sound like a boomer saying that, but like a few years have passed since then, so I can't say that my experience then is certainly what the landscape is like now. That's why stuff like the convention was so helpful for me to talk to people like yourself and other groups. Like, for example, at the convention, I talked to someone who runs their esports program. I think they're out of Puerto Rico, and they started the program. Uh, this was three in March, like March or April of this year. So very new
Yeah.
program, and that there's a diversity of experience there as well, where there's programs like the top dogs that you can name in collegiate, but also there's those groups like the person starting his program in Puerto Rico, and it's only been around for a few months, right? And
Right.
so one of the eye-opening things for me coming back into the space and listening and learning is discovering that the barrier of entry for establishing a program is still so high. You know, there's a marked difference between the people you're talking about, the enthusiastic faculty member, for example, and like being able to have a salaried employee, right? And that's a huge difference in the commitment that your administration may have for you and your program. And there are a lot of orgs that still, even now, are not there yet. You know, and so for us, the biggest thing in creating this education was how do we make it accessible, one from a financial perspective
Sure.
for programs of all levels to do so. Two, how do we make it accessible at an experiential level too, right? So how does someone who consumes it on one end of that experience spectrum take away something as much as someone consuming it at the highest end? And so you know, we've been really painstaking with that. I think you know, NACE members and NACE executives have been great partners and giving us feedback for that kind of stuff, and we're continuing to iterate on it, which is really important to us to make sure that it's the best possible product for everyone.
Yeah, what would be so with Coaches Guild? You're working with both. You're tapping into collegiate now, right? But you are also working with outside organizations outside of collegiate, correct?
Yeah, we're aiming to kind of you know, collegiate K through 12. I
Oh,
think
awesome.
that's a big aspect of it too. And right now, of course, like League of Legends is my wheelhouse.
Same.
So a focus of the in-game education specifically right now is League of Legends. We're looking to do other games like Valorant and Rocket League, which have huge collegiate buy-in. You know, by the end of the year, and really get those courses down. But the K through 12 market is so interesting because League of Legends specifically is not as played
Yep.
in that age group compared to when I was introduced to it and
It was
played
my
all the
life. It was my
time.
life in high school.
Yes. And we're just in a different generation now that has different, I guess, expectations for the game, or a different perspective on how they feel about the game, which leads them to them playing it less, and then those kids go to college, and then they're probably not joining the league program as often. And so, you know, that's another aspect of what we're trying to do, is get people enthusiastic about that game again, at that level, so that you know, we can keep that pipeline that you mentioned going.
Well, if you need an advocate for that, you've got me in your toolbox.
Clay's your guy. I don't know a thing about League.
I live and breathe that game. I'm not saying I'm good, right? But like I strongly believe the competitive landscape in League of Legends is second to none. I just I don't and that could just be me completely biased, but I think there's so much that goes into it, from a teamwork, a strategy, a micro point of view.
100%.
It just, I don't know. It just feels different to me, and I've been playing it for so long. It's embarrassing that I'm still this bad, but you know, it's fine.
The fingers don't catch up to the mind kind of.
Oh well, no, the mind's. I got the micro, the macro's not there. I can do some cool looking stuff, but then I'll be like top lane for no reason. You know what I mean?
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
There's an old clip circulating somewhere of I used to stream and stuff when I was back in college, and I was playing with one of my buddies, and he goes, "You have TP. You should go top and force them to you so that we can Baron." And I took that as like, I would never do this now. I'm better now, but I just straight TP'd to top lane as Nasus, and they were like, or it was bot lane. Sorry, I TP'd to bot lane, and they were just like, "Oh, they're huge. Nasus is bot. I'm just gonna go take this." And he was like, "No, not now, you idiot, because they're just gonna run us down at Baron, right?" Stuff like that.
This is like a second lane. I have no idea anything.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, that's like starting to become a more common collegiate experience, you know.
I mean,
so
in my experience, started out team. However, it just didn't end up being successful for us, and we had other avenues where programs, you know, developed a little bit more and had a little bit more success. So I never really.
Is that just like student buy-in?
Yeah.
Is that kind of like I think you guys are kind of the average experience at the moment, it seems,
Yeah.
when it comes to League of Legends in a collegiate space. I believe it's Esports Foundry put out data recently
Yeah,
that
they have a whole report. It's actually
yeah, and part of the report was that League is the second. It's Rocket League is number one,
yep.
and then League of Legends is kind of the second highest offered program. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the buy-in is there, even if the offering is there, right? And so it's just about like how do we in the future balance these numbers? I think
Right.
that's the question that the guild itself is not able to fully solve on its own. It'll take a group effort of collegiate programs, K through 12 programs, the publisher as well. I think Riot has a huge hand in how that shakes out in the strategy there. But I'm happy to be a part of that solution and try to find ways to figure that out because, excuse me, sorry, based on my own experience, this I love this region to death. I've been through every level of the proverbial pipeline, all the way from the grassroots amateur side, the collegiate side, the academy side, the LCS side. I've seen it all, and so for me, it's really important to maintain it, make it better. Leave it better than I found it. I guess
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
best way to put it.
A Boy
So
Scout model.
yeah, exactly. And so uh, for me, that's why we do what we're doing, and how we're thinking about those problems you mentioned.
Absolutely. I think for a lot of programs, especially like ours, I wouldn't say we were, out of nothing appeared something, but we were definitely built pretty quickly.
Very
And
quickly.
Clay was the original founder of the program, and he had an idea of what he wanted to play. I mean, League big at that time was big in the collegiate scene. It's about the same time you were traveling all around the globe. It seemed like, but
Yeah,
I would say even 3 years ago, there was a difference. I think league, at least quantity wise, so it's still very, very popular in the collegiate scene, but it's
yeah,
like, each school has 5 players that play instead of like 20 that are interested, right? So there's still
right.
the amount of colleges participating, but there's not as much student interest nowadays.
yeah,
Within the college, right?
exactly.
Like teams that could have had a sixth or seventh man on their roster now are just getting a starting roster together, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And yeah, it's like a slow bleed, I guess you could say. And so
I think that's what interests me about esports in general, but especially like collegiate esports, is the flexibility that they have though. In okay, this isn't in looking at the times and then looking at what's popular right now, right? We can kind of pivot. If League of Legends isn't the thing anymore, which I pray that doesn't happen for a very, very long time. I love League of Legends, but if it's not, we pivot to Smash or we pivot to Overwatch or whatever the game is at the time.
yeah,
And there's still pretty much no matter what, if you have the equipment and you have the staff and support, you can make it happen for your students. And I think that's and certainly a benefit for me at least.
Yeah. So maybe I was wondering if you might have some advice or something to a coach or even like a high school K through 12 administrator or somebody who's looking to start a program or maybe has started a program and not sure where to go. What would be like your 15-second elevator pitch piece of advice for them?
you're saying for specifically someone who starts a program,
Yeah,
or
someone that's starting a
who's
program, new to a program, inherited a program, something like that.
Yeah, I think my biggest advice would be try to go not just try to invest in talking to not just your college administration for the purpose of securing resources, but also your city governments and like
Mm.
the local municipalities, because those at the end of the day, like these esports clubs and esports programs, as much as they are varsity programs, in some of them are club programs, some of them are varsity programs, but either way, they're community building and their reputation building programs for the entire city itself, potentially, and the entire college itself, right? Great example of this is my hometown, Toronto. Uh, they just released a 50 something page report made by the city of Toronto and the provincial government, that is a report that says, hey, in the next 5 years, we want to be like an esports powerhouse in the region. And
Wow.
this is how we're trying to do it. This is what the strategies we're implementing, the recommendations we're implementing. And, part of that includes, of course, like investment in the local scene in different ways. And I think that is something that, and I encourage especially people who are in bigger city colleges to do this. But I think there's value in it for smaller cities as well. But to really engage with local government and local municipalities the same way that you engage with your collegiate administration, because at least from my personal experience, I was also student council president
Yes, me too.
of my
You too?
of my
Yeah.
university, and the big thing was there's a lot of administrative bloat and bureaucratic slowdown and sludge that kind of gets in the way of things you want to do.
Yep.
And at that point, it's about like finding different avenues. One great example of this, just off the top of my head as well, is the way like Maryville is building an arena, and they have like city support and city I they're working with the city. I don't know to what extent exactly. I'm not too familiar with the whole process that they're undergoing. But my understanding of things like building an arena, building a new building, that's kind of like more on the public use side of things. They're involving the city in a pretty deep way. And so, yeah, it's a weird piece of advice because it's not intuitive necessarily, but the funding is out there and the enthusiasm is out there, and it's not always going to be out there in your college. It'll also be out there in these like government opportunities
Absolutely.
as well.
Yeah.
That's something that I'm learning very quickly, and actually working on a few projects. I can't specify specifics yet, but
Sure.
hopefully, if they work out, it'll work out in a sense of I'm not working with strictly the university and the university's budget. I went outside of the box and reached out to different organizations that don't really have a traditional stake in collegiate or esports at all, and it's hoping it pays off in the long run. But it's still a good piece of advice because we're a big city, but we're a small university.
Yeah.
And we still kind of did the same thing, reached out of the box, not directly with Rockford, but contacted other organizations in our area.
Yeah, and I love that you hit on that, and that was kind of like your go-to suggestion for his question, Gabriel. We've talked about, I think in the last two, definitely the first one, but in the last two, when we're talking about somebody who's maybe interested in starting a program, or maybe you're a club and you're looking to go take that leap and make it a varsity sport or a university-sponsored group. We talked about this thing that there is support somewhere. Right. Anywhere whether it's in your university or in the community, kind of like you just alluded to, there are absolutely people that will support it. Right. So especially within like a university context, we were actually fortunate to have a lot of support on our side when we were just across the university when we were creating it.
Yep.
But if you're at an organization or you're at a university that the people that you think to ask, they're saying no right away, or you're getting a lot of pushback on it, man, there's alumni, there's current students, there's community partners who maybe they're not even necessarily the ones that are like, here's $1 million check, right? Or here's $500,000 for you to use.
Yeah.
But if you can almost think of it like, people use petitions, and here are people that support this, and hear from them. This isn't just, me, Clay Duffy or me, Tanner Elliott saying, hey, this is great. We have community people, and at times you'll find that some of these people in the community that support it are actually already big supporters of the university. And so their word carries a lot of weight, right? If we trust person A, they've done such good things and good recommendations for the university, and they're on board with this, it might not fully convince people, but they'll start asking questions. Am I being difficult? Is there a way that this could be beneficial?
Right, it gets you in the door, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and we really talked about that just from the perspective of people you have on campus. We didn't really go into detail about like community-wise, and you're absolutely right. So I think that's a great suggestion there. I'm like, that was a great answer.
Yeah,
that was a great answer.
For sure.
In terms of so you've seen a little bit of the collegiate side. I know you've talked about it was a little bit back. It was about what, 2018, something like that. You said, right? 2017, right? So you're a bit removed, more so towards the professional side and now the coaching side and things like that. But what would you say are some differences that you've noticed from the professional environment to the collegiate environment? Because they're both obviously incredibly beneficial, and and could be pipelines in certain ways, but I think they could both feel different at times. And have you recognized any differences?
Oh, 100%. I
Yep.
mean, especially in my experience, I was a student while I was coaching other students.
Mm,
And as a result, that is a very different power dynamic for you as a coach compared to being a professional, an adult who is, in some cases, I was coaching people in my time in LCS who were older than me, or
yeah,
and so or who were from another country, right? And that's not very common in collegiate either, as compared to the LCS,
yeah, yeah,
where
certainly.
there are sometimes maybe one could argue, too many imports or what have
Yeah,
you.
Yeah.
Uh, Anyways, all that to say is the context of your coaching is very different. In my time in university, I was very much approaching players from a more equal footing, not as much an authoritative footing. And in a professional setting, you do have to leverage that more authoritative side a little more often, um, in order to establish standards, establish a culture, establish trust within a team. Uh, because and I think this is the other aspect of it too, is I think the work ethic of university students is, I won't say better, but it is different in the sense that you're already used to having so much coursework and whatnot that league is not treated like a job, so people invest easier into your methods
sure.
in the university setting, compared to when it is someone's job and they're fighting for their lives and the livelihood of their families
Right.
and earning money for them in some cases or what have you. Like that, those are also very different contexts and very different dynamics in that regard. And so I had to grow up pretty quickly in my move to professional coaching in that regard. It was definitely a trial by fire. It's great that you bring that up though, because that's another experience that motivated me to create the guild. Right? If you have this like coursework education, this wisdom from these experienced individuals that have come before you to ease you into that transition, if and when you do make it, uh, or to give you the life skills to ease into that transition into a professional work environment in general, that that's a positive for the scene and a positive for the region. So
Yeah, and I think in collegiate, we see kind of that not difficult, but like kind of awkward dynamic that you mentioned that you kind of encountered when you were in LCS a little bit is some of these coaches or some of these coordinators at times are students. I mean, these are people who are
hmm
working, like maybe they're leading people that are exactly their equal, right? Like we're both students here. Some of these coordinators aren't getting paid. They're not a formal position, but they're
yeah,
taking the initiative and accountability to, invest in their program and stuff like that. And I know that's something that
That's
Tanner and I
something
have both been into. When I started the program here, I was just a graduate student, so I was very much a student along with my players and trying to kind of work that role of being a coach or being a leader, but also kind of it was a unique dynamic for me is I was actually playing on the league team as a graduate student. So it was kind of like I'm the coordinator, but I'm also playing. It was an interesting dynamic,
sure,
and
yeah,
there's not a lot of good answers for how to navigate that. And then obviously Tanner experienced the same
Same
thing.
thing. Yeah, I was playing on the Siege team while doing the coordinating for the program. We had a coordinator above us, but he had a full time job elsewhere,
right.
doing other things, and I was
So
the
a lot of
main.
it fell to you.
Yeah, a lot of. I
Yeah.
was the main boots on the ground kind of guy, and
hmm
it was just difficult to instruct players who are also people I go to class with, and then also kind of just build my reputation as a leader in the program rather than as a student who plays alongside of them. So we're both very familiar with.
And I think there are benefits to having, whether it's a student worker or a graduate assistant or people that are students involved in the program, right? Every day is Sunday. That's phenomenal to have as much involvement as you can. But I think
hmm
having dedicated staff is one of the most, and this is just my own take, and my own impression, but I think being able to actually have somebody on staff full time, which we're very fortunate to be able to do now, and some universities are working towards, some have had it for 5-6 years, right? It all depends.
Yeah.
But I think having that breakup could potentially be beneficial in the long run. I think there's student led parts that can bridge that gap, but I think it also can be important and beneficial to have that coach, that director who's a full time employee.
Yeah, I mean, one of the benefits for me is I was able to learn what the players are going through.
Right.
I mean, if a full time, if you had the experience you had playing and coordinating, if you're a full time faculty member that just jumped on for the enthusiasm of esports, you're gonna have a difficult time understanding, the pressures and stuff. And it might sound silly to somebody that's not involved in esports, but there's a lot of pressure and competition, especially if your school's all eyes on you. And
or even the detail of conflicts that can occur in a program like that, right?
Exactly.
Like if you don't know the correct context to the game or the correct context to the tournament, or et cetera, but you just have gumption and you're gung-ho about esports, like you're still going to have a lot of difficulty maneuvering through that stuff. So
exactly.
Yeah, and on that note too, that's where it helps to have, I don't want to say an authority figure, right? Because I'm not a fan of like I say this, you do that, right? But just like any other sports team, any other department across your campus, or any part of your organization, wherever you're at, right? There can be conflicts, right? There can be varying perspectives and viewpoints, and to have people who are not necessarily unbiased, but impartial to trying to solve, be the best team that they can be. I think in that aspect, it would be beneficial to have somebody up above, where it could be difficult for a student to navigate that, right?
Yeah, I'll say too, before I mention, 90% of people who who have programs, they can't really have a salaried individual be running it or coordinating. And that's where we try to step in and work on two fronts. For the people who don't have a salaried person, try to lower the barrier of entry for access to information on things like conflict management and whatnot. And for the people who do have a salaried person, just because you're salaried doesn't mean you're a savant at this stuff either. Like you could still benefit from understanding the strategies that work at the highest level. And that's where we step in, and that's where we come in and say like, hey, we are the guys, we are the state of the art kind of offering for that for you all. And so, not to shill in that regard, but we really do want to jump in and be the people who prep and arm the next generation of competitive staff, so that the programs that you guys are trying to run are the best that they possibly can be.
You touched a little bit on this already, but do you mind going into just a little bit more detail about how you offer these things to coaches and what platform you use and that kind of regard?
Yeah, absolutely. So we offer this as a online offering in a digital learning platform. The platform we use is called Game Plan, which is an esports focused learning management system. We've loved Game Plan. We found them to be a really great partner to us for a couple reasons. One is just the ease of use of the platform, but the other reason is the types of activities and ways in which you can create your lessons allow us to actually engage in really good pedagogical theory when it comes to the lessons. It's not like I just throw a lecture on there for an hour and you're going to sit there and listen and take notes. Like, there's a lot of active ways and on the platform in which you can challenge people to challenge their learning retention and challenge their ability to process and analyze the information that you're giving them. And they keep building out more tools to do that. So we're just really happy to. I could talk about Game Plan endlessly, but I don't think we have the time. But we're really happy to be with them and house our learnings and our coursework on their platform. So if you're a member of the Coaches Guild, which is for individual members, it's $500 a year. You get access to everything. So you get access to everything that we do, and then we also have partners that cover the blind spots in what we do that are housed on different learning platforms. So this is part two to your question, Tanner, which is um, we have I have blind spots in my coaching knowledge, in particular, for example, in health and performance, right? I don't have like a kinesiology degree. I'm not a physical therapist. I can't speak to those things as much as the experts can. So we've actually partnered with the Esports Health and Performance Institute to give members access to everything that they offer education wise for free. And
Oh, wow.
so that's housed on a separate platform to Game Plan, but it's stuff that you still have access to really broaden your horizons and understanding and learnings as a coach as well. So for us, our stuff is on Game Plan, but for our partners who we engage with, their services and courses may be on other platforms.
Sure.
As a faculty, like I'm a professor here, and as a faculty member, I appreciate, and I think this is showing in the success that you guys are seeing with Coaches Guild and stuff like that. Is it would have been easy to say, let's sit down, let's record lectures or record gameplay on X, Y, and Z. We throw it on Dropbox, and if you pay us, we give you the zip file or whatever, right? And I think the attention to how that content is delivered, where that content is housed, how accessible it is a huge foundational part of the battle that is developing coaches and players. And so I guess all that to say, I just kudos. I think that's really interesting that
Absolutely.
was conversations that you guys had instead of just how can I monetize my expertise, but more so how can I make my expertise accessible to people in the best way across the best learning modalities and all of those different things.
Yeah. And even further than that, we've made sure that it's a living document of sorts, in the sense that games are video games are very different than like basketball or soccer,
right?
Insofar as the rules do change very regularly.
We talked about that last episode.
Patch notes come in, things, and so the education not only has to be, as you mentioned, but it also has to be iterative to an extent. That you actually have to adjust things both on the in-game strategy side, especially as those changes do come to the game potentially, but also on the out-of-game coaching concept side, like as more research into different coaching concepts happens, we may need to adjust or change how we present something or what we present in a given topic based on those findings, right? And what we end up learning about things from those findings. So it's doubly hard in that respect. Not only do you have to engage with it in this way, but we also have to be constantly monitoring the ecosystem to see how we have to change it if we do. So
and to me, that's what's so interesting about what you guys are doing and the strategies that you guys have for that. But esports especially, but we're in collegiate esports, but just esports in general, we're never going to find the right answers that we can then sit on for decades to come, because these games, two ways, right? Either the games that are now popular are changing, so League of Legends isn't in or whatever, which I will grown man cry the day that happens. But it's not League of Legends anymore; it's Smash, right? Whatever it is, and then in each of those games, every week looks different, right? I haven't played League, I haven't actually sat down and played seriously in probably a week and a half, 2 weeks. I'm probably going to get smashed the first time I play because I don't know what patch we're on. I don't know who's strong. Right. And so I've always just been personally drawn to problems we can only temporarily solve, So, video gaming is absolutely that, whether it's Siege, Smash, League. For decades, we're going to be trying to figure out what it is the best strategy, right?
Constant game of catch-up.
Yes.
And I think 100%. That's the value in something like what you're doing, because you guys will never be able to, unless I'm wrong, but I think you'll agree with me here, you guys will never be able to be like, here's our exhaustive list of resources and you'll be perfect for the rest of your life. Right?
No.
This is all
I can't even say that about myself. So.
yeah, but I mean, you guys will never reach the end where you're like, we've covered everything, right? Because that everything is going to change next week.
Yep.
And so I think keeping tabs on that and proactivity that you guys have is really, really interesting and empowering to see. Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Tanner, what do you have?
I don't know. I don't know. That's a lot to take in. Super interested in it. I was super interested when we were first able to talk at NACE to begin with, especially as somebody who is, I mean, I'm not new to esports, but I'm new to program coaching and directing.
Right.
Right.
There's definitely a whole lot to take in. So I appreciate you actually taking the time and giving us a little insight on your experience.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we're definitely very fortunate and grateful to have you on, especially this early on as we're starting this podcast. We're very fortunate to have someone like you with the experience and the resume that you have, and just the overall insight and things that you're doing.
Of course.
So Gabe, thank you so much for your time on this podcast. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter as invert_lol, LOL. And you can find the Esports Coaches Guild on Twitter at coaches_guild. We also have every form of social media. We have Instagram, LinkedIn. We also have our website, which is www.esportscg.com. There you can learn about what we do. There's a nice little polished intro video about everything.
I watched that today, actually.
Yeah, no. Hey, shout out to PeerSpace for helping secure the studio.
Yeah.
For that. And then yeah, be on the lookout for quite a few things. We have a very big announcement next week. I was hoping to actually kind of talk about it or leak it a little.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I can't. But
I was gonna say, I was like, if you just want to, go ahead.
It was supposed to be announced before we were recording, but yeah, I think it's got pushed to next week. So I don't
just teasing us just a little bit. So.
Yes, but I'm very. It's I guess it's relevant. The tease is it's relevant to how I met you guys.
Okay.
Nice.
And in that regard, and so we are very excited to be engaging in partnerships with groups that want to help the region and help grow coaching education and esports education as much as we do. Really happy about that, and also I'm really just a show of appreciation for people like yourself and kind of the collegiate scene at large. Like, it's amazing how willing to share resources and advice between one another.
For sure.
It's very communal in that regard from my experience engaging with the scene coming back to it, which I'm very happy to see because, it is very much about creating that rising tide together.
Absolutely.
And you save that competition, you save the backstabbing for when you're on the rift,
Amen.
I was telling somebody the other day that, football coaches don't go around and share their playbook, but when it comes to esports, it's an open book. I mean, if someone walked into my office and said, "Tanner, do you have resources for this?" I'd pull up the NACE Discord and we'd look together. I mean, it's pretty open book.
I mean, to that football point, I mean, they in the off season they may go share ideas, may grab a drink together, or whatever. I know in my experience as well, coaches in traditional sports will often go to coaches in other traditional sports to get advice in that regard, like basketball coaches seeing football coaches, seeing soccer coaches, etc. So, but it's great to see that communal nature kind of continue to exist. I'm very appreciative of that, and people have welcomed myself, for example, with open arms and with piqued interest, which I'm very grateful for.
We have a fantastic idea and a fantastic platform to do.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Gabe, thank you so much for your time and your expertise and just your overall dedication to the world of esports and what you're doing now in the world of collegiate esports and things like that. We will certainly post all of your links and stuff like that. We'll keep tabs for that big announcement. Absolutely. Yeah. We'll keep everybody posted on that.
You'll see it, don't worry.
Yeah, for sure. We'll set the alarms for when it comes out. We'll post your stuff down below for this episode. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Collegiate Esports Experience, and we will see you guys next week.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Thanks, Gabe.